Sean P. Malone here again, and I have with me Suzanne Lloyd, who is the granddaughter of the stars of tonight's film, of course, and she's a restless champion of Harold Lloyd's work and legacy. Suzanne, thank you so much for doing this with us.
Hey, thanks, Sean. This is great. How much fun is this to do with a Harold film when everybody is kind of sheltered in place, stuck at home?
I know, we need him right now. We really need him right now.
We can do some travel along and do some crazy stuff with him. This film's Never Weekend's full of great stunts, and he was just kind of practicing a lot of his stunts in this film to be able to go and do one of his most iconic films, Safety Last, in a couple of years. This was kind of the template for it.
Yeah, that's right. And I was personally actually introduced to silent comedy by watching Safety Last. So as you can imagine, I mean, I especially enjoyed tonight's film because of those similarities. What kind of reaction do you usually see to this film in particular, to Never Weekend?
He does get on a building that, quote, is under construction. And to see what he does with the form of his physicality and being very much of a athlete, acrobat, if you want to call it, what happens with the girders. I mean, that's just horrifying to me. I can't, this, it gives me sweaty palms, to tell you the truth. I just, I don't know how he did it. And it wasn't like, you know, I lived with my grandfather for 20 years. He raised me as his own daughter. I was the daughter of his first child, Gloria. And I'd say to him, hey, what was it like up there? And he said, you know, you had to concentrate very hard to think about what you were doing and have a real feel for it and be on top of it. And I said, but there was a lot of places that were gaps where you could, you know, fall off or really hurt yourself. And he said, yes, but it was a mental state of mind. And interesting enough, we'd go to a circus and he wouldn't watch the acrobats above on a tightrope. He would literally find a way to walk out of the arena and pretend that he was getting you popcorn or candy or a drink. And finally, I kind of caught on to it when I got a little older. I said, Dad, why are you walking out when this? He said, because I'm not mentally in my mind prepared to, I know what they're doing and I can't watch it unless I'm mentally being able to do it. I do it myself. I know what they're doing. He couldn't control it. So it's interesting. I think in a lot of acrobats and flyers and trapeze artists are like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's that famous production still, that behind the scenes photo of Safety Last, and you see, you know, he built the facade and everything for the side of the building, but you see there's just a little mattress there. Like, that's really all that's there. And you could have easily, you know, fell and missed the mattress. So he did some really just amazing, dangerous stuff.
Well, you know, funny thing is they took a dummy and threw it off, and the dummy missed the platform. And he said, well, thank God that wasn't me. But you think about the camera crew and what Walter Lundin did and his partner.
Yeah.
They were up there at the same height. And then sometimes with the facade, they had a facade of the clock built on top of the building with a facade. But even at that point, he was 5 stories high. I don't think you want to drop off of even 5 stories high, let alone, you know, 13, 14 stories high. You don't want that at all.
I can imagine. You know, you mentioned that you know, were raised by Harold, and, you know, you were able to get to know your grandparents in a special way for those first years of your life. What are some things maybe about them as people outside of their screen personas that you wish people knew more about, your Harold and Mildred?
Well, my grandmother, wonderful, just the most loving, fun person you could imagine. She was a great actress, and I'll tell you, she was very upset when she was madly in love with Harold, and they were married for over 50 years. But she wanted to still be in a profession and still keep acting. And that was a big sore point because Harold said, you know, if we're going to get married, you know, you really can't stay as my leading lady because I can't be married to my leading lady and do romantic bachelor comedies. And Harold's films are really the template of romantic comedy. He's always getting the girl. He's chasing the girl. He's dating the girl. He's asking the girl to marry him. And that is the subplot under every Harold Lloyd movie. So, right. And that per se is romantic comedy. But interesting. So she said, okay. So she'll be his wife, accept the ring, live with him. But she said, I still want to make movies. So after she had my mother in 24, she went back to the screen and made 2 films. And she did it for Xana. And then she got pregnant again. And, you know, and then she said, oh, forget it. And they were building a huge house, Green Acres in Beverly Hills, which is a national historical home. And she kind of said, oh, I'm going to give this up. You know, you can't build a house, have 2 kids. Then she adopted another child, a daughter. And that kind of ended it. But at one point she wanted to play out. They offered her Alice in Wonderland. And this is in the early 30s with Cary Grant as the White Rabbit. And she really wanted to do that.
Oh, wow.
And she was 1 second away from getting it. And she became pregnant with my uncle, Harold Lloyd Jr. So she had to back out. But I must say, but you know, in the 20s, and especially in 1923, 24, women didn't really say, well, I want to stay in the business because I think I'm good at it. And I really give her kudos that she was strong enough to stand up to him and say, well, I still want to be in the business and keep my hand in here. And she had a real good sense for film and film people and what was going on in the business. And her best friend was, well, 2 best friends. One was Frances Marion, the famous writer and director, and the other one was Mary Pickford. And,
oh, okay.
Yeah, so, you know, interesting, when she had her son, Harold Jr., Mary Pickford was his godmother.
Oh, okay. Wow. One big, happy, silent movie family.
Yeah, they were a whole group.
Yeah.
They all played. The funny thing is they'd come over and they'd all play cards together or mahjong or parcheesi or something. Sure. They were always, or doing puzzles. They loved big puzzles. I don't know. Harold, you know, Dad was a lot like his screen character. I mean, he was interested in everything that was put in front of him. Life was like a huge adventure for him. He loved people. He loved knowing about every person. It didn't matter, you know, it could be the guy down in the corner selling the newspapers, to the guy in the soda shop, to the guy who, you know, the tree arborist that took care of the trees at the house. I mean, he was fascinated with people's stories and who they were and what they did. And he was always giving back to people. People needed help. He'd find a way to help people. And I think that said a lot for him. And the power to get over the accident that he incurred at such a young age in his career of losing, because the accident with the bomb, mm-hmm. from losing the sight of on his right hand, his thumb and first finger and half of his right palm, to overcome that in 1919 when he's just making 2-reelers, and he just hired my grandmother as his new leading lady. And to come through that, where he thought at one point he was going to be blind, then he thought his face was not going to be able to go on top of the screen because he had burns. Mm. He knew he wasn't going to get his hand back. I mean, that is an amazing feat for a young man to go through.
Yeah.
especially when something was so as dear, he tried so hard, and he'd really gotten onto the top of the pile. I mean, he was making more two-reelers than Chaplin or Keaton, and he was more popular. People, I don't, you're a fan of Lloyd's,
Yeah.
and I guess you'd put it down to he was really a people's person.
Yeah.
He cared about people. And I think it shows up in his film work very much of how much he cares about people.
Well, he was such, I mean, from what I know of him, he was very charitable too. I mean, he
Very charitable. I mean, he ran
right?
Shriners hospitals
Yeah.
for the children. He ran them. He actually ran in the end of his life. I thought he ran hospitals when I was growing up. I wasn't too sure if he was a film. I also thought that he was a photographer because he always had a camera around his neck, and that was his passion for 3D photography. But he, with the children, he went into the Masons and the Shriners in 1924. But at the end of his life, he found that the children really needed burns hospitals. So he started the 3 burns hospitals for the Shriners. And I think that probably went back to what happened with he and his hand. But
you know, I had never thought about that. But that's absolutely understandable.
And but he never talked about his hand. I mean, nobody talked about it. Everybody just accepted it, except for when I must have been 7 or something, 6 or 7, and I was down in his photo lab, and he was cutting film and putting it together for his 3D photography. And I just looked down at the table, and I went, "Oh my!" I said, "Daddy, what happened to your hand? I thought it had just happened." And he looks at me and he says, "What? What do you mean?" You know, thinking something had really just then happened to his hand. Well, I was looking at his hand, realizing he didn't have a thumb or a first finger on his right hand or half his right hand. And I flew out of the lab. I ran to my grandmother. I'm hysterical, going, "Oh my God, Dad's lost his hand." Dad's like, and she's going, "What? What do you mean? He's hurt himself?" I mean, you know, and I'm going, "Yes, he doesn't have." And all of a sudden she said, "Oh my God, honey, it's okay." And then he came running in going, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Well, you never told me." And they never thought about it because when it happened, they hadn't even been married. They hadn't had children. So their children grew up with that. The kids just assumed it. I assumed it for a long time. That's the hand I used to hold all the time, you know? It just, he made it part of his life, and he never made a big deal about it. And I think that says a lot for somebody, because I don't think there's another, I don't know, is there another actor that's ever been that critically handicapped or hurt in an accident?
And that was that much of a daredevil, right?
Yeah, that much of a daredevil to go. And the things he did, and he did more magnificent stunts after that accident than he'd ever done before. It didn't stop him. It was almost like it propelled him on to do more. Like, what more can I do? And just went mind over. He used to have a saying, mind over matter. Here you go. Don't worry. Don't worry. Why worry about it? Mind over matter. Just move ahead.
I think that's what I really enjoyed and appreciated about him as I've learned more about him, is that he's kind of indefatigable. You know, you can't really stop him, which is, like you pointed out, it's like his screen characters, you know, how he's just, you can't stop, you know, the glasses character. He's going to do the thing he's going to do.
Yeah, that's it. And that basically was his personality. He wouldn't do things to be evil or mean, but to do good and go ahead. And he was always kind of pioneering. I mean, he loved cameras. He loved forging the fact that he taught people in the camera industry to put, you know, a camera in a manhole, how to set up track where there was no track. He wanted that camera to move with him, to be on the football field and go and with him running. You know, they hadn't had come up with cranes yet. He wanted the camera to go with him up the tree in The Kid Brother when he was saying goodbye to the girl on the hillside. And they literally built a rig and like a dumbwaiter so the camera guys could go up the camera with him because he wanted one full shot of it.
Yeah.
And then when he fell down, out of it. And that whole sequence was done with one cut. And that's very hard to do, especially when nobody had that form of equipment. Like in Girl Shy, you wouldn't have had Ben-Hur 3 years later being shot and the chariots going around, you know, the Colosseum, without Harold, who put cameras in the manholes in downtown LA to do the chase scene in Girl Shy. Because he said, I want to look up and I want to see the horses coming at me and I want to be on the ground. And they said, well, how are you going to do that? And they didn't have handheld cameras then, you know.
Well, that's, you know.
It was, he just wanted to push the envelope.
Yeah. Well, you know, I like to keep little mementos. My grandparents are passed away also, and I like to keep little things that remind me of them around. And I noticed you have Harold's Oscar there next to you.
Oh, I put this here for you. Yes. Oh.
So, you know, before we sign off, I just wanted to point that out to our viewers that that is Harold's Lifetime Achievement Oscar. So thank you for getting that out for us.
You're welcome. Master Comedian and Good Citizen. He received it in 1953 from Bob Hope, was the MC, and Cecil B. DeMille gave him the award and said to him, I hope, you know, hey, my spectacles aren't as funny as yours, which is great. But hey, you know, he made glasses famous. I mean, and popular.
Right.
Nobody wore glasses to think that they could be a film star or a character. And he just took magic with a pair of glasses and just ran with it and made a lot of people happy and laugh and enjoy things. And that's really kind of important, especially now where we are in the world and circumstances. So I hope everybody stays safe and healthy and stay at home and listen to everybody about getting through this. But a little Harold Lloyd laughter might not be bad.
Yes, silent comedy is a good medicine for the world right now.
That's right.
I wanted to, before we sign off, Suzanne, is there anything like out there right now, new releases or something folks can get their hands on right now that's Harold Lloyd, if they really enjoyed tonight's performance?
I just did a DVD for Flickr Alley.
Uh-huh.
It isn't per se a Harold Lloyd movie, but it's Harold Lloyd's photography in 3D. And they have a new DVD out. It came out end of March, called 3D Rarities Volume 2. Harold's on the front of it with his camera. And of course, when he started shooting, he was older. He started shooting 3D photography in 47. And he amassed over 200,000 photographs in 3D that he shot himself. And this is just about a 20-minute little teaser sample of his work that I did for him. And I narrated it. And it's kind of fun to see where he went in travels, what his family, with his family, what he did in travels, what he did with his family, what he did with some trip photography. So that's great. And I'm working on a new release. If people want to see Lloyd movies, and if you wanted to re-see what you're showing tonight is Never Weaken, I have 4 releases out on the Criterion label, the Criterion Collection. And they also show his films. He was just at the TCM Virtual Film Festival last week with Safety Last. Turner shows, they have 65 titles of his films that I've restored for them. Oh. And also there is the Criterion channel.
Well, we'll keep an eye out. I just want to thank you again, Suzanne, for spending this time with us tonight. And if you're watching at home and you enjoyed tonight's performance, of course, check out those releases that Suzanne mentioned. But also, please consider making a suggested donation of $7 to Retroformat by visiting retroformat.org/donate. Thanks again. Make sure and join us next Monday night for another installment of Retroformat Live. Thank you, and good night, everyone.